Terry, thank you for joining us. I mentioned to you earlier, the vision for these interviews is to create resources for our future clients, so that they can see behind the curtain of what it's like to truly sell your business, and specifically to sell it with us at Agenda Health. So, as we're discussing, please feel free to share the entire spectrum, highs and lows. We would love for people to get an honest look behind the curtain of what it's like to sell. So, to get us started, would you mind kicking us off with the 2 to 5 minute version of your personal story and the story of how you started your first hospice, and then just kind of run us up from starting that hospice all the way up till maybe right around the time that you got a call from us asking if you might want to sell?
Well, actually, I started off my relationship with Alvich when I was doing developmental disabilities projects, which was what we had basically done for about 32 years now. Al had brought me a project that he was brokering, and it was in Texas and in Louisiana. And we worked through that transaction. He actually gave me a cold call, which I generally do not take. And for some reason, I took that call. We discussed the project that we ended up buying from him. And then
Yeah.
a few years later, I was looking to diversify what we were doing, and called Al and said, really was thinking about doing something in the home health space. And he suggested I take a look at hospice, that he had a client that he was working with, and we took a look at it and we bought that hospice. And then a couple of years later, I told him I was looking for another one, and he found me another one that we bought as well. So
Yeah.
that's how I kind of got to know Al. It's really
Yeah.
strange. I do not generally take cold calls.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So, how many transactions total was that?
Well, that was three, and then we eventually sold our hospices. We kept trying to acquire more. By that time, the private equity companies had come in and pushed the price higher than we could go. And so we turned around and sold our
Yeah.
hospices in 2020.
Okay. And then, in that process of selling specifically, what was the process like, from letting Al know that you were ready to sell through finding the right buyers, due diligence, the whole gamut? What were some of the doubts, fears, you know, or the opposite that kind of was there for you during that process?
Well, I had been experiencing doing transactions, so I really wouldn't say it's fears. It's really not knowing what the pricing would be at that point in time. We had an idea that what it would take for us to sell out. Um, the process was it took about 6 months for us. Um, they had some early people look at it and passed on the transaction, and then one of Al's staff, Dutch, got involved, and basically we sold the company twice. We had an offer that we accepted. The seller ended up pulling out because their backing had fell through, and then we ended up selling to another party that Dutch brought us as well. And we actually exceeded our expectations on the price.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned not normally taking cold calls, but for some reason, Al, you took his call and built a relationship with him there. And I know that can be hard to put into words as far as why you answer one call and not the other. But if you had to, what was it about Al and Agenda that attracted you not only to take that first call, but to continue taking calls and progressing towards closings?
Um, we just hit it off the bat. I guess he kind of caught me in a mood that I was ready to talk to somebody. Uh, but more importantly, I've always found that Al never did anything to my detriment that was his betterment. That means he wasn't trying to maneuver me to do something that wasn't in my best interest. That would be in his best interest, and I found that refreshing. He listened to what I was trying to accomplish and helped me accomplish that.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and during that process, and maybe without going into details, but you mentioned having one deal kind of fall through. Uh, did you ever feel like it wasn't going to close, or was the expectation always, the next in line, we're gonna?
Well, it was kind of an interesting. We had similar offers from both of these companies, and the one that fell through, it was actually on a Friday evening. He called me about 5 o'clock, and I asked him, was the other party still in play? And Dutch made a phone call and said, yes, they will match the offer right now. So it wasn't like a lot of anxiety. It was like, oh,
Yeah,
that worked
it's
fast.
quick. That's always good, and through the diligence phase of the second round, did anything kind of unexpected happen? Yeah, I guess you mentioned on the positive side of the unexpected that you kind of ended up getting more than you had expected at the beginning. But just as far as the roller coaster ride, if you could give somebody a sneak peek into what it's like sitting in that seller's seat,
Well,
what were, yeah,
it was, and I've bought and sold businesses all my career. This is the first time I'd had really dealt with private equity and their process. It was a hard process. I mean, they definitely did an examination of our company. It was thorough. It took longer than I would like. I'm an impatient person by nature. Um, and one of the things that Al and his team did is kind of guide us through that. Um, when I get frustrated, taught me off the ledge. Just it was a tough process,
yeah,
particularly when we're dealing with the private equity. I've done a lot of transactions that were not with private equity. That was the first time I'd been through that, and the deep dive that they do into it was lengthy and excruciating, painful.
yeah. That brings me to another question that I think would be very valuable to sellers. And you mentioned you did multiple transactions. What did you learn from that first transaction that maybe you had ready by the second and the third transaction, that was like, okay, these are the questions that are going to ask when we get into diligence. These are the documents I need to have ready. Were you more prepared the second and third time through?
I think anytime you go through something, you gain experience. My background was in public accounting, I was CPA, so I'm a numbers guy. So the numbers part never give me any kind of problems. It's just the deep dive they do into your legal the compliance and the documentation they wanted to see. It took our team the first after we went through it one time, we were pretty good at doing it the second, third, and fourth time.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously this is a confidential process, and you never want to let the cat out of the bag before it's time. How did you manage kind of managing a transaction to a close while managing and running the business?
Well, once we felt comfortable that we were on the landing pad to a close, I believe you get out front of it and you tell your staff, and you
Yeah.
want them to meet the new owners. You want them to start feeling comfortable with that process, and just be out front and honest about it. So that we did it a little bit different than a lot of people. We had our buyers come in and sit down and talk to our staff and get to know them, so they know who they're going to be working with, and getting more familiar with the new owners, and getting that anxiety on the sell side, um,
Mm.
kind of pushed it to the bottom, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. One last question as far as transactions go. If you could go back in time and give yourself, or, put yourself in the seat of the sellers that we're working with now, if there was only one piece of advice that you could give them, or one thing that you would have done differently, what would that have been?
Be patient. Be more patient when particularly when you're selling a company that you've grown from the ground up and you've made it successful, and that's part of your identity. So it's a little hard to let go of that. And sometimes you just have to be patient about it. Look at the transaction, is a fulfillment of your responsibilities you had to that company. You're ready to do something different, or you're ready to pass it on to somebody you think can take it to the next level. Um, just do that with an open mind to saying, this is where I am in this part of my life, and I'm ready for it. And then be patient and let the process roll.
Yeah, that's really, really great. And you started your career obviously not being in hospice, and then kind of were turned on to hospice through this process, and then over time, after divesting all of your interest, you founded a new company called Hospice Dynamix, and I would love to hear more about that. On your website, it says that Hospice Dynamix, we managing your hospice through predictable analysis. Could you tell me about, how your experience led you into this, and how you see what this product is, and how you see it to be valuable for hospice owners like yourself?
Ryan, that's a great question. The way it started, actually, after we'd sold our hospice company, because we couldn't compete against in the market anymore, we actually did quite well with it on the sale. I told my guys that my team here that we're going to take a little bit of time, figure out what we're going to do next. And at that point in time, my father-in-law, Ronald, was put on hospice service. And I have a brother-in-law named Clay Wildman that would fly in from California. He had just sold his marketing business and started working with an AI startup company that had a patented technology that they had developed in the fraud, waste, and abuse space. Well, we would visit with my father-in-law, Ronald. He'd take a nap. We'd go out and do what guys do. We talk business in the garage. And he told me about this patented AI technology they had. And I asked if he could get Tasia Burr, who is the AI scientist over there at 4L, could she do this in the hospice space? And she said, yeah, I can do that. So actually, there's an algorithm that she's developed that we're able to predict the length of stay for a hospice patient from the day of admission through the end of life. And from that, we have basically developed three core utilizations of the platform. One is the CAP computation, which we have automated with our predictive analytics. It's patent pending technology. And then there's a compliance piece and a marketing piece to the software that we think is very beneficial to all hospice providers, whether they are a 200 patient hospice or a 20,000 patient hospice. So really kind of the genesis came from my father-in-law being on hospice.
Yeah. Yeah. And, starting this and looking back to the time when you were a hospice owner, if you had a tool similar to this, would it have, do you think it would have made you more competitive with the bigger companies who were coming in, or just more profitable to have been able to,
Well,
to,
it definitely would have changed the way we did business. I had a cap problem. Cap problem cost me about $250,000 that we worked through with what people did back until this technology. We were using Excel spreadsheets and figuring out our cap, but it was not. It was more of a hand grenade approach versus a dart. And then we also experienced, after we sold, an ADR problem, which cost me about $1.6 million. So there were very pricey lessons learned.
mhm.
And we've taken those lessons and we have attacked those problems with the technology that we've developed.
Yeah, and any hospice owner who's listening to this could probably already, and you've already mentioned the benefits that come with a service like this, and they're already calculating, how this could help them. In layman's terms, how exactly could this be implemented for hospice owners today?
Basically, what we love to do is show demos.
Hmm.
Most people, once they see the demo, are coming up with other uh, tools that this gives them in their toolbox. It'll change. You can use it to change the behavior of your referral sources. Are they putting people on too late? Are they putting people on too soon? And giving them data for them to be able to look at how they are referring people for hospice.
Mm.
The compliance departments are in love with it because they have a tool now to be very strategic in what they are looking at, the records they're looking at, to document what they need to be that are at risk of an audit. And the compliance, on the CAP piece, we're able to use predictive analysis um, to be able to calculate the cap liability to the last day of somebody's in that cap years is still in service.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are doing this and they're kind of guessing the length of stay. This is a AI algorithm that's predicting the length of stay and more accurate than anybody has seen to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. And then, if somebody wanted to, schedule a demo and reach out to you guys, how would they go about doing that?
They can go to our website. It's Hospice Dynamix and schedule a demo.
Awesome. Terry, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today and your insights into the process that you went through with us, and then for sharing about Hospice Dynamix as well. It's an exciting new endeavor, and we hope and wish nothing but the best for it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I wish the best to Agenda and the team that Al's put together. I am impressed every day by the new people he adds and how well they do.
Well, thank you, Terry. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye.